see you're back in the purple room again,
Yeah,
which is always nice.
I turned around like a dumbass.
There's our outtake. Like a dumbass. Or maybe we'll have him bleep out the ass part, but nonetheless. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Cloud Whisperers. I'm David Broussard.
And I'm Brian Cheatham.
Hey, Brian. Guess what? It is episode 38 today.
38.
So I thought we might switch it up just a little bit. And when we do our What Have You Been Up To Lately, since we're recording this a couple of days after Father's Day, I thought I'd find out what you and your family did for Father's Day.
Well, we went over to my in-laws and hung out with them for the day. And they did, he calls them beer can chickens or whatever, but they're really, I call them drunken chickens, It's got it's basically got a, beer can up the chicken's butt, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
So we did a couple of those.
Got beer in it, or is it just water, or what?
Yeah. So you have the beer in it, right? And the idea is that as it cooks, it's the moisture from the beer and all that's coming up and keeping the chicken moist. And it actually surprisingly works very, very well. We do one of the traditions that we have is we cook all the turkeys, my dad and I do, for the different families, because he has a big trailer smoker. So we can cook 5 turkeys on it, and we just sit. Yeah. So we sit there and just keep the temperature. But anyways, to maintain that kind of moisture in a turkey and everything, you have to almost have, or a chicken, I guess you'd say in this case, you have to have some sort of moisture on the inside. So that's what the beer can does, right? And it just keeps the moisture on the inside of the chicken. So yeah, we had drunken chicken for Father's Day.
Drunken chicken, I like that. So yeah, it's interesting. I got a smoker earlier this year, and so what did I? When my eldest asked me, "What do you want for Father's Day, Dad?" I was like, "I want a brisket." And so she was like, "A brisket?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I want a brisket." So I went with her to HEB and bought a trimmed brisket. It was about $45, right, for about a 9-pound brisket. Yeah. Expensive. And then I trimmed it some more when I got it home, right? Rubbed it with my rub that I've developed over the years that I use on everything. And then stuck it in the smoker. The first time I did it at 225. Yep. And it took it 22 hours to cook to 200 degrees. Yeah. And I was like, I ain't waiting that long. Yeah. So I pumped it up to 265, and it cooked it in about 8.5 hours or so, 8.5, 9 hours, or between 8 and 9 hours. And, every hour or so I go out there and I put some more mesquite chips in, because mine's an electric smoker. And then about an hour before it was done, I threw in a pack of beef sausage and then smoked that as well. And those came out so good. They were juicy. Yeah, the sausage. They hadn't burst, right? And they had the wood smoke got sucked into it. And they were right underneath the brisket. So I learned to put the brisket at the top, because all the heat rises in the smoker, and so it gets more heat up there. And I've got a cool little electric probe thermometer that Bluetooths to my phone, so I can be elsewhere in the house, and I can see how we were playing Settlers of Catan, which my wife got me for Father's Day, and we were playing. I had an older version, but we got a newer version of it, and we were playing as a family, and I was watching the brisket. 100, it's 185, and a couple turns later, it's 187. It's getting closer, kind of thing. So that was it, and then we took some over to the in-laws and gave them a couple pounds of the brisket fresh out of the smoker. Yeah. And I've been having brisket for breakfast and lunch yesterday and today. So, hey, it's good stuff. It's good stuff.
Brisket sandwich, brisket taco.
Oh, man, brisket tacos are so good. Man, that's delicious. But yeah, and brisket that's been microwaved is not the best in the world, but it's still decent. I still like it. So it's not, and brisket's expensive. And so being able to smoke it myself is actually a pretty good thing. I just need to warm it up in the oven as opposed to trying to just nuke it in the microwave, because it gets kind of tough that way. It's much better if you just stick it back in the oven and let it heat up.
Yeah, let it heat up. Yeah.
Yeah, kind of naturally kind of thing.
Brisket tacos, man. Eggs and brisket, on a taco. And who has them is Rudy's.
I don't do the eggs. I just do the brisket. Right.
Okay,
so I just do brisket and salsa, or brisket and barbecue sauce in a taco is absolutely perfect. You can get that at Bill Miller's, by the way. get a brisket taco, and it's just like three or four slices of brisket in the taco. And then you throw some of their salsa on top, and you're like, man, this is good right here.
Yeah, good stuff.
So everybody's hungry now, right?
I know, right? Post Father's Day hunger.
Well, and so I thought today that we would talk about another aspect of Microsoft Viva. And the reason I thought about this is that Microsoft just pushed Viva Pulse into the public preview. So now everybody can go out to Viva Pulse. And so if you go out to, I think it's pulse.viva, it's pulse.viva.cloud.microsoft. Don't ask me why, that it's not Microsoft.com or something like that. But no, now we have .microsoft as a new domain, right?
I saw that.
So pulse.viva.cloud.microsoft is where you go. And when you first go in there, it's going to take you, and you have to be an administrator to do this. So don't just anybody go to their tenant, right? But it will take you to the preview access page, and you have to turn it on. And then once you turn on the preview access, then you will have access to the newest part of Microsoft Viva. And so, Brian, you may be asking yourself, what the heck is Viva Pulse, right?
It's like I'm like trying to Google it.
No, we don't Google things. We Bing them. Okay, remember,
I know.
We're Microsoft aficionados, so we always Bing it.
I was trying not to let my Microsoft show, David.
That's okay. That's all right. But so what is Pulse? And so if you work in HR or you work in employee experience, okay, inside of an organization, usually it's inside of HR. A lot of organizations and companies will do what are called Pulse surveys. And these Pulse surveys are, and sometimes these are done many times a year. Sometimes they're done once a year. But what they are is they are surveys from your employees to get feedback on how the organization itself is actually doing. This is really important because if you don't have that kind of feedback, especially anonymous feedback, right, where employees feel it's okay for me to say something critical and nobody's going to know that it was me that said it, okay?
Yeah.
In that kind of situation, now suddenly you've got a situation where you can actually get that feedback from people. Now, in the old days, a lot of times that meant hiring a company like Gartner to come into your organization and paying them a lot of money.
Yeah.
Okay. To have them send an anonymous survey out to all of your people and then have them fill out that survey and then send that survey back. And then they would come back and then give you an update on how your people are doing. And a lot of organizations would hire companies like Gartner or Forrester to do that, but they would do it just once a year because it was really expensive. You could also go with some companies, and there's one that I worked with for many years called Office Vibe. Okay. And Office Vibe was a company that they sent out a survey once a week or once every other week. It was kind of your choice of how often you wanted to get it. And the survey was usually 10 questions long. It was very, very simple. And there were questions like, do you feel that you get enough feedback from your peers? And then they asked you to rank it from 0 to 10. Or with Office Vibe, they had like a little slider that made the person happy on one side and sad on the other, and all kinds of stuff like that. But the point was, you were getting feedback on a regular basis from the people inside of your organization. Okay. Now, how you use that is really up to, and that's where HR comes in. That's where your people managers come in. That's where what you're doing is you're trying to give feedback to your organization. How do the people who are in the organization, the employees, feel about various topics? Now, if you do it once a year, then you're going to get overall feedback about the company. But if you can do surveys more often, then you can fine tune those responses. And so what the idea behind Viva Pulse is, you now, as a manager in your organization, have got the ability to go out and create a series of these surveys inside of your organization. And so what Microsoft has done is they've created a whole bunch of kind of what I'll call question templates. They call them templates, right? It is unclear as to whether we'll be able to create our own templates and insert them in there or not. But you can take any template and then you can customize it, and you can remove all the questions out of it and put new ones in. But, there's an example like one around well-being. right? Or one about hybrid working, and one about change management support. And this is kind of for organizational level things. But when you go out and ask people about well-being, it's really, it's designed to be a 6-question, 1-minute survey, right?
Right.
And so as I pull it up and look at it, the first question is, I'm able to cope effectively with work-related stress. Rate it from 1 to 5.
Yeah.
And then,
it's very broad
got a
stroke.
follow-on. Yeah, very broad stroke. But then it's got a follow-on that says, well, what could help in this area? And then you can say, and the examples that they give you by default are more flexibility in where and when I work, additional team members, more equitable division of the workload, effective boundaries between you and your personal time, and other. Now, you can then go through and edit any one of these, and you can add your own questions, right? And when you add a question, it can be a rating, right? So from 1 to 5, strongly disagree to strongly agree. It can be a multiple choice where you can say, how do you feel about this? And then here's your 3 options, right? Yeah. Or it can be, tell me how you feel, just write, it's open text, right? It's capturing all that information, okay? Yeah. So it's kind of cool. And then, the second question is, I'm treated fairly at work. And then it says, what do you recommend we do to improve this area? And it's got some suggestions. And then I am satisfied with my ability to choose when and where I work. And then some, this kind of, well, what are some things that you could do to improve this area? So the idea is, you create you pick one of these templates, you modify the template to be what you want to track and ask about, okay? Right. And that's a well-being one, right? There's one around team member success that's asking questions like, I know what I should be focusing on, I have the resources to do my job, I feel included, the work that I do is meaningful. I know a lot of people who listen to this podcast are probably, when I say a lot of people who listen to this podcast, okay. All 3 of you out there that listen to this podcast, right?
And counting me and you.
That's exactly. The one other person, right? The guest we have usually that listens to the podcast, right? No, we do a little better than that. But those, our editor has to listen to the podcast. I forgot about him. So up to 4, right. Okay?
We're 4 now.
Poor Marco. He's got to listen to our podcast as well. I should tell you, does your wife listen to the podcast?
She listens to it for about 5 seconds.
Okay, there you go. Just get the outtake at the beginning, right? My wife won't even do that. She's like, your work is so boring. It's like the most boring thing in the world. I'm like, okay, sure. I find it fascinating. Most of the people who listen to this podcast, right, are going to be techies, right? That's kind of our niche, if you will, right? But understand that, if you talk to people in HR, if you talk to people that are people managers inside your organization, that ability for people to get feedback quickly and easily from the employees inside the organization, man, that is huge, okay?
Well, and to be able to demonstrate that as well, to be able to say, hey, okay, well, this is how people feel about this, right? So, for them to be able to do that to leadership, right? That's amazing. So how does this stuff get delivered to the user? Can you do it like via Teams, or how does this? Well,
there's a number of things. So it starts out by, it sends them an email, and they get an email, and the email will say, hey, you've been invited to answer this, right? And it gives them a link. And you also, when you do this, it generates a link to the Pulse as well. Now, once you have that link, you could do anything with it, right? I could post it in Teams. I could put it on a website. I could SMS it out to people. Lots of options there. And I would say that, and understand, it's inside your organization. This is not for talking to people outside your organization. That's a Microsoft Forms or a SurveyMonkey or something like that, right? This is for internal feedback, okay? And what Microsoft does is, like, for example, I'm using it at home. I have 4 people in my tenant, and I'm required to have 3 people respond to it. And the reason that there's a minimum number is Microsoft is trying to make sure that it can anonymize this so that it won't be simple and easy for you to look at it. So first off, you're not seeing the results and says, Brian Cheatham said this, right? It is instead saying, this is the feedback you got. You had a rating of 3.5 on this. You had a rating of 5.0 on this. You had these responses that people said would help, so many total kind of thing, right? And so that gives you that ability to get that anonymized feedback, right? So that your employees will feel, the members of your organization will feel, hey, I'm free to actually, recommend I'm free to actually give honest feedback because I know it's not going to get traced back to me directly. Okay.
Right. Well,
so
there's a structure to it, right? So
there is a structure to it.
It makes it more constructive, than, just an employee going off about something, right? So
correct. And that is a big aspect of that as well, right? And so that ability to go back and take one of these templates, right? And some of the templates are organizational focused. And some of the templates are more for like a project focus, right?
Right.
So there's one that's like a post-project debrief. And so this is asking people, well, how did this project go, right? Were the goals clear? Did you have a clear project and timeline? And so this is a way for you to get feedback. And so when you create this thing, you will then create this and then you will send it to certain people inside your organization. Okay. And so you can use distribution lists. You can put down individual people's names. You can do all of those kinds of things and then give them a personal note that goes with it. Okay. So that ability to get that personal note, to request the feedback from them, and then once you send it out and go ahead and forward it, right, it has a time to live, right? So there is a start date and an end date for these things, right? Usually it's about a week, okay, to give people a chance to get the email, decide to respond. You can extend the deadline, you can close it early, whatever you choose to do as you work through these things, okay? So it really is great because then, like I said, once you're done, you get to go back and you can review that information. Now, what I'm waiting to see, right, are what are the other integration points that we might have?
Where does it integrate? Yeah.
Can I automatically, so if I have a PMO system and my project ends, right, and I know in Dynamics or in my PMO system or whenever that my project has closed, right, can I have it automatically send all of the project team members a project team success template, right? So that ability to automate some of that stuff, I think, is going to be really nice. An ability to go out and send out, a monthly well-being to the entire company kind of thing could be very useful as well. Okay. But I don't know right now how, and it's in preview, right? It's in public preview, so everybody can use it, right? But it's still in preview. So, features may change, features may go away. But I'm hoping that, one of the next phases we get out of this is going to be API publication. How can you automate and integrate this? But even if they don't get to that, if that doesn't come for another year, there are still significant value from being able to go out there and actually look at these things.
Integration with some of the other Viva components too, the framework's there, right? So
the framework is there, and Viva Goals does have integration areas to it, right? So Viva Goals is designed to allow you to have your OKRs be fed by other party systems, right? So I'm expecting that Pulse will have some endpoints from an API standpoint that'll let us go out and grab things. And hopefully what I'm also hoping that we'll be able to do is, like send out that well-being or something like that every week or every month, and then be able to pull the output of that and put it into kind of a rolling database so I can see what are my trends over time? Because in the end, that's the true value of a Pulse survey as opposed to a once a year survey. The once a year survey is a snapshot of your company at this time. And that's a great thing to have, right? But if I can ask quick surveys monthly, biweekly, weekly, something like that, now I can start looking at trend lines and saying, hey, people's stress levels are going up. People's stress levels are going down. People are feeling that they're disconnected, whatever those things happen to be. And that means that as the organization, we can then take proactive action to remedy those situations.
Retention and all those sort of things, right? It plays big into that, I'm sure.
Exactly. And look, we're going to continue to see Microsoft release things that from the techie side, we're kind of going, hey, where's the fun stuff I get to do with this? And the answer may be there isn't. Right? I mean, yes, technically I can do programming with Word, right? You can do office automation and you can auto build documents based on with Microsoft Syntax, there's cool things where you can have sections of a document that get populated based upon the values of the fields that you fill in. So you have conditional sections. All that's really cool, right? But most people just go ahead and use Word to write. And IT's never involved, right? There's not often a lot, there's a lot of end user activities. And this is one of these ones where, all you really got to do is show this to your HR team or whoever's in charge of that, project, your PMO, whatever that group happens to be, and say, hey, you guys can use this. And you can be, this can actually be a game changer inside your organization.
No, absolutely. That's very good stuff. I don't get, like I told you before, I don't get a good peek into the Viva side of things, with small and medium business, but I'm definitely starting to see the use cases, as we talk more about it. And this is outstanding, man. I mean, heck, I'd like to use it just for, the few bit of people that I work with and interact with on a daily basis, and just send that out and say, hey, how are you guys feeling about this project?
That'd be the next one is, well, like I said, if you want to do this for external people, right, then you're using something like Microsoft Forms. And there are ways of automating Microsoft Forms. And obviously, Power Automate works with Microsoft Forms, right? And so I'm hoping that we're going to see the same kind of things that, when these Pulse surveys end, can I then have a Power Automate kickoff, right? And have it go out and say, okay, based on these things, I want you to move this data into a database. I want you to send an email to this person. I want you to do these different things because of what we got out of it.
Well, yeah, and like you said, Project End, for the for the migration side of the house, we call them post-project mortems. So we'll have to have a template for that, in the migration world.
That is, and it's really important that you do those things.
Yeah, no, it is.
It's really important to do those kinds of things because that's how we learn from our mistakes and how we learn that what works.
No, absolutely. I love what project managers do. I'm going to say that just so everybody can hear it. I'm usually one of the lead technicians on a project, and I love project managers. Okay, so all of you other people out there that do architect level stuff or whatever, repeat after me. I love project managers.
That is true. I do as well. Okay, so Brian, that brings us to that time of our show once again, the one last thing. Today, you had the idea for our one last thing, and I really liked this. So here I'm going to pose this question to you. Tell me your two favorite comedians, and we're going to go old time, which can be any time before yesterday, right? And because I could see someone saying Eddie Murphy. Look, there's lots of people who consider Eddie Murphy old time, right? And to me, Eddie Murphy's like contemporary because, I grew up watching Eddie Murphy, and that guy's hilarious. So we're going to go with, one kind of old-timey comedian and then one contemporary comedian. And just tell me who they are and why.
I'm just laughing because I'm thinking a classic, who's a classic, classic rock, what's classic rock to you now? Those terms are starting to come into, I guess into our reach ages that we're getting to. But anyways.
80s music is now no longer classic. It's now oldies. And it really offends me. It offends me now.
It offends me as an 80s person.
That's right.
Yeah. Yeah. So if I go back and I think to just kind of growing up, one of the things that my dad and I did, in honor of Father's Day and all that, was we used to love and just laugh hysterically at the Pink Panther movies. I didn't know until later in life, one, as a kid, I can laugh at this guy, but becoming an adult and realizing how talented that guy really was, and lost him very early too, but he could make you laugh just by talking. This man was absolutely hysterical. Everybody probably knows him for the Pink Panther movies and all that, but there's a movie called, I think, Being There. It's a movie called Being There where he's a gardener, and that's all he knows how to do is garden. And he's in the gardener in this guy's house or whatever. And you would think, man, this can't be a funny movie, but it's hysterical. And the old man that runs the house and everything ends up passing away, and they end up telling the gardener, okay, you got to go out into the real world now. So he goes out into the real world and he's doing all these things, and he treats everything like he's gardening. And he gets asked all these questions, and, he gives advice, and it ends up giving advice to all these huge political figures and all that. And they get up on the radio or the television, they start spewing out this stuff that he's talking about a garden. It's hysterical. So anyways, Peter Sellers would be the old one. The new one right now for me, just at a point in time, in honor of Pulse, at a point in time, I would say it had to be Adam Sandler, because I can literally, if I'm like if I'm dulled out or just like, oh, today, blah, whatever, I can put Billy Madison on or Happy Gilmore or what any of those movies.
50 First Dates.
50 First Dates. I mean, that movie actually has, comedic and other, I think the guy is a genius.
The Water Boy.
Oh, yeah, the Water Boy.
You can do it.
And it's a family for him, right? It really is. Yeah. It's a family for him. He has all these same people in his movies and all of that. And I just think the world of what he does and how he's been doing that same thing and speaking gibberish and making millions of dollars by doing it. I mean, you got to admit he's doing something right? So those would be my two right now. How about you?
So I've been going through a bunch of these and thinking about it. And I thought about like Bob Hope, who's hilarious, and Abbott and Costello and the Three Stooges and even John Belushi, right, who I loved his samurai stuff.
Tim Conway.
Oh, God, Tim Conway and Harvey Korman are probably the funniest people. Yeah. I can sit down and watch. There is a skit from that where Tim Conway is going on about this elephant that he saw with Mama's family. And everybody is just, it's Lyle Wagner, and it was Vicki Lawrence, and it was Carol Burnett, and they can't keep a straight face. They're hiding their faces. They're laughing so hard. And he's going through this whole thing about doing the merengue and doing this. And finally it gets done. And Eunice looks over and says, are you done? He goes, yes. And then Vicki Lawrence drops this, is this little done? And she drops this. And everybody, Tim Conway falls off the chair. Yeah, everybody is rolling on, and you're just like, it's so hilarious. But those weren't the ones I thought of. The guy I thought of going back is actually my old-timey one is Mel Brooks, who much like Peter Sellers is a guy who just makes you laugh. I have seen not all of his movies, but most of them. And I have this whole theory about the best Mel Brooks movie you ever saw is the first one. I have younger friends who their first one they ever saw was Robin Hood Men in Tights. And they're like, it's so funny. And I'm like, it's really kind of derivative. It's very similar to, it's very similar to Blazing Saddles. It's very similar to this. Yeah. And they're like, oh, no, or Spaceballs, right? And I'm like, I like Blazing Saddles. I've made my kids watch that movie, and we've had to stop it and explain a few things to them. And you talk about just a movie that pillories racism, right? Yeah. That nobody would show. There's the old joke that, the edited version of Blazing Saddles is going to be on TV tonight from 8 to 8:08, right? Because they just have to cut everything out.
They have to cut everything out.
Yeah. And then for my modern one, it's Andy Samberg from Brooklyn Nine-Nine. That guy is, and I've seen him in a couple of movies as well, but Brooklyn Nine-Nine is one of the funniest TV shows to have come out in a very, very long time. Yeah. It is an absolutely ensemble cast. Andre Braugher as Chief Holt, Captain Holt is just so deadpan. So, the thing that makes, his main character, Andy Samberg's character, work is everybody's actually good at their job. They get into hijinks. He gets duped by Doug Judy all the time, all this stuff, but they're actually good at their jobs. Yeah. All of them are good at their jobs. They're neurotic. And you can have fun with it. And it is his and Charles's bromance is the second best bromance on television. Because nothing tops JD and Turk from Scrubs. That is the quintessential bromance. JD
They're in commercials
and Turk,
now.
Okay. Oh yes, with John Travolta of all people.
I know.
You're just like, okay, but that's good. That's a great question. And I hope that it's made people listening to the podcast or watching us on YouTube, made you guys think about who might be, some of the people that make you laugh and make you enjoy yourselves. Look, the company that you and I worked for when we were together, one of our core values was fun, because we recognized that fun was vitally important to having a workplace. We're going to work hard, we're going to play hard, and we're going to have fun at work, because if you're having fun at work, you want to be there and you want to work hard and you want to do things. So
I think positive notes on Pulse.
Yes, that's true. on all of those rating places and the like. But please, yes, if you're enjoying the podcast, if you like the podcast, please, leave us a rating, go out and give us a review, reach out to us. I'm at DeBrusa on Twitter, DeBrusa on Facebook. Brian is at Get Cloud Savvy, 2 V's in Savvy.
2 V's.
So
2 V's.
If you send it to 1 V in Savvy, it's not going to get to him. So send it to 2 V's in Savvy, and you can go ahead and find him out there. And like I said, we are on Apple Podcasts. We are on Google Play. We are on Spotify. We are on SoundCloud. And now we're posting these a few days later on YouTube as well. So you can actually see pictures of Brian and I as we go through this. We're not doing live video because you really don't want to see that. I mean, it's just that's not what you want to see.
It's not what you want to see.
Yeah, but please, reach out to us. Let us know that you enjoyed this. Let us know that you're listening. We would love to hear back from you.
Absolutely. Give us a comment. Let us know what you want us to talk about.
All righty. Well, until next time, Brian, I will bid you adieu.
I will talk to you later.
All righty.